Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of Stormgate. This is the podcast where one random StarCraft player, it's the main RTS I've played, talks about the new still upcoming, hopefully I will continue doing this once the game actually comes out, has not even hit alpha yet, upcoming game, RTS game, but from Frost Giant Studios, Stormgate. Today, as you all scramble down to hit the like and subscribe button, right? Yeah, no, I'm sorry, that's a terrible intro. I'll work on it later. But as I was saying, today I will be going over the recent AMA that the developers did, basically in response to the gameplay. Response is the wrong word, but they did a week after the gameplay release, so that's 2 or 3 weeks back now. Apologies for being so late. Maybe I should just call this a 2 weeks bi-weekly series and just be done with it. Who knows? Regardless, I will be going over it, just going over the AMA and looking through what questions the community's had and what their responses are. Hopefully this works out well, as I will. Yes, the system works. Good. So the first question has to do with what's the target audience with regards to storytelling. Is this going to be a very, very black and white, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe? That's what I'm going with. Or is this going to be more, I guess, Game of Thrones, The Witcher, where you've got there's no one is good. Okay, The Witcher, everyone is bad, but there's a few shades of bad. So the answer to this question is basically they want to make it like the MCU in terms of that maturity level, which this just feels like a contradiction. We are aiming to tell complex and compelling character stories with a maturity level and tone similar to the MCU. The MCU is very good at what it does. I'm not sure I call a lot of it complex. And honestly, one of the most complex parts of it, I suppose you have Loki, but he's more just a villain with a redemption arc. Bucky, he doesn't have a redemption arc. He just flicks a switch from good to bad once he goes out of Winter Soldier mode. The more complex part is probably Spider-Man Homecoming, and that's not even Marvel. I know it counts as MCU, but you get my point on the answer of that. So we'll have to see. I hope it'll be good. I hope we get a little bit of. It sounds like it's going to be very good versus evil, but hopefully, unlike StarCraft 2, we go more for the StarCraft 1 style, where we just get to play the villain. I think that could be very fun. Another question is basically, what is the political statement on Earth? It goes into a little bit of backstory about the Sigma 6 thing, which I personally can't remember. Lore on the resources. Why does it work? Does it have any bearing on anima? Anima, for those who don't know, is basically the reason why the Infernals have come to Earth. It's sort of a mana type of system for them. Bit of questions about timeline. And then talks about, is this going to be a character or world focused on the story? 6 is 3v3 like the co-op missions of StarCraft 2, where they basically, for the most part, took random missions out of the campaign and adjusted them to make them work for 2 people, or is it something else? And then, or is it just another campaign? And how does that change when you have more or less players? And 7 is it... Yeah, how unique are they going for this? Or is this just we mashed all the Blizzard things together? Because obviously they are former Blizzard devs for the most part. Okay, so Stormgate is you're playing one of the resistance groups called the Vanguard. Okay, that's the geopolitical system. And the Sigma programs were basically, yeah, as it says, battling or avoiding catastrophes. One of them was trying to solve world hunger. No law on the resources. Understandable. All of that stuff probably still building. So the Infernals had been on Earth before, and no longer are. And now they're back, and yeah, who knows whether or not they're here to stay. Looks like it's going to be a character-based story rather than a world one. I think that makes more sense if this is planning on taking place mostly on Earth. The reason why StarCraft 1 I think was a bit more world-focused was because it was just creating an entirely universe and probably kind of had to. Co-op, not sure that question got answered. And you want to... So there are definitely references, but also it just developed that way, is what they're saying. So the question is, yeah, TLO versus Monk. TLO is overtaking Monk. It took him a little while to learn the game, is basically what he's saying here, but yeah. After about a week, he's the one ahead. If we were both trying our hardest, I don't think you could take games off of him. Now TLO's taking it easy on him in his own game. So some of these questions I think are we need to see how it develops. There was an interesting thing about so Kevin Dong is saying the co-op designer is saying wants to move away from upgrades. I'm personally not a fan of that. I think just sort of the weapons armor upgrades I do enjoy. I don't think every upgrade has to be an ability. It doesn't have to be Blink. It doesn't have to be Stimpak. Like, it doesn't have to be big and obvious. Just, I think, I like the idea of there just being a reward for going for that long-term just build on power that it's one of those things where it's the difficult battle between rewarding you for doing something while not making so too obtuse for your opponent. And I like the idea that it's one of those things that you know, if you're in Silver League, say, maybe even Gold, you get upgrades and your opponent isn't, and it feels really, really good. Spells ignoring armor. I do like this. Well, spells ignore armor. They're supposed to, but we haven't coded it yet. I just love that answer. It's just like, yes, eventually. And apparently it looks like there will be negative armor, so that's going to be interesting. It looks like it's something akin to anti-armor missile. Hard to say exactly. And so currently aliens are, die when their dropship does, but that remains to be seen. And I think that's probably the correct. Like, it's easiest to do it that way, but we'll look into it in the future. So, are the endgame units still in the game? And how are they going to be balanced? Creep, talking about creep cams, camera locations. I'm just going to straight up say yes. Military units. Okay. So talking about number of units per faction. And what's the target number? And how will playtesting occur? So they are in the game, but they haven't got them yet. Yeah, they aren't there yet. That makes sense. You've got to design a game like this from the bottom up, because you need to know how the early game is going to work before you know how the end game is going to work. And some of that includes art stuff as well. And in fact, it looks like they might even be going even more endgame with these units, but they want them to be specialized. The sense that, it says here, maybe an endgame that can only break turtles. Maybe it just doesn't, like, it moves real slow or something like that. But if you can hit it early across the map, you can keep chipping it down, sort of thing. And endgame units will cost even more supply, so you could have a 10 supply Thor or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so the thoughts here is that this is to counter, units that are way more expensive, but don't cost as much supply, so to max out more low tier units. And currently they're sitting on max supply of 300. I believe that's a change from before. I think they'd been trialing 200 before. So we'll have to see how that ends up. Yes, they will interact with creeps uniquely. Camera locations, yeah, that was always going to be very early on, I think, in this game. So they won't have the same number of units, and they're going sort of for the StarCraft 1 Wings of Liberty level of unit numbers, which I think is probably a good idea. And the testing is going to be broken up. It's not just going to be they open and then they're there forever. Which makes sense, because they'll roll out, they'll have a patch, it'll be up for a month. Then they'll bring everything back in and take some time to work out what worked, what needs changes, etc., etc. So it's going to be a similar armor system, like StarCraft 2. Okay. So that is, I believe, is regards to like the light / armored / biologic, those things that appear on the bottom of the screen. So, unlike Brood War, for example, where this says it'll deal 20 damage, why is it only dealing 10? Or why is it dealing 40 instead? Something like that. Instead, you can look at your, Hellion or whatever, and says, 14 versus, I can't remember the exact numbers, 8 damage, but 14 versus light. And then you know what your enemy light, you can work out what enemy light units are, and you can work out why your units are so much more effective or not effective against different units. And it's going to be, yeah. But they're expanding on it, so you might get units that are good against armored and biological. And Banelings, yeah, they kind of do. It doesn't really, it's quite different. Going for a percentage-based armor reduction system rather than a literal number, I think that's probably the correct choice, because I noticed in the games I casted last that it was a Protoss versus Zerg. I'm not I think it'll come out after this video. I haven't decided exactly yet. But both players have +3 attack and no armor upgrades. And that's probably not a good thing. I think having that interaction where you get both, and it yeah. And it's like, while we enjoyed the interactions we've seen throughout the years with breakpoints when you upgraded armor/attacked, they were not very noticeable for the vast majority of this. I believe that's referring to basically how, like, with siege tanks, they would want... This is back when they did 35 damage. It would one-shot a Zergling until the Zerg got 1 armor. At which case, you need to get 1 attack on your siege tank. And then, at that point, it didn't matter how much armor your Zergling had. It would always get 1 shot. I believe that's sort of sort of what they mean by that. But they think that it's actually not brilliant. And it doesn't work. So, yeah, okay. And, that's interesting. Well, we realized while developing StarCraft 2 co-op, because we wanted to scale enemies almost indefinitely, armor stopped mattering at a certain point. Why? Yeah, what does two armor matter when your enemies are dealing hundreds of damage per attack? And that makes sense. So, a percentage-based system does work. So there will be some units that operate like that. That'd be interesting. I wonder if the heavily armored or the lightly armored stuff would go more along those lines. Be tough to say. And questions about the map editor they are using it. Like, they're already using it to make maps. That they're using their map editor to sort of the release editor to make their maps, which is a good sign. Obviously, I'm gonna put it a long way out there and say it's got a lot more work to go. It's not going to be, you know, the level of editor that you get in other RTS games now that are released. But if you can already create maps in it and not having to do like the custom outside of game sort of like using the actual code to create maps, I think that's quite good and quite a good sign as well. Questions about the chickens. Kind of, I think they know how amusing everybody is finding the chickens, so they want them to exist, but they're not going to be the whole game. What does an associate level designer do, and why does that poor lad have no surname? I believe this is this. So he is... Sorry, I probably should have read through more of these. Currently, he's basically designing maps. He's basically custom, you know. He would be one of those people in the Team Liquid map competition, except he's making maps for Stormgate. Is the impression I get from this answer. And he's not a previous RTS person, but likes the social aspect of this, which is cool. Yes. Any unit designs have already been relegated to campaign co-op because they don't think they're a good idea in player versus player, in like 1v1 and whatnot. The answer for this is basically mostly abilities and possibly some creep style stuff, which is good. And okay, so it's talking about how in StarCraft you can hover over your display in the top corner. Not everyone may know this. And if you hover over that, it shows you how many workers you have, and versus army, and not just your overall supply, which can be very good. And the answer is probably not by default, but an option is quite possible. And this is actually a really good... I think I like this way. This is a good... how to explain this? A good thought process, I think, for the design. Because, you know, additional UI, even when it contains valuable unit information, is not necessarily always a positive for new players. That is one of those things that I understand what they're saying there, and I'm like, but I want the information. I hope they include options to have as much of that as possible. But and the clarification on this is good, because like one of the most important things for new players is being able to focus on the right information. And having lots of information doesn't always help with that. So, oh, I have 40 workers, but no, the important information is the fact that you're supply capped. The number of workers you have doesn't matter. You need to build depots. And another question about editors, and they have made a tower defense game, but there's still a lot of work to be done on the editor. So it can be done. It is working, but yeah, more work to do. And so kind of a retreat command of Vanguard air units that sends them back to the nearest hangar bay and repairs them up, similar to Company of Heroes or Dawn of War. I think that's probably a good idea. So this is more sort of general unit commands, more than just attack, move, and patrol. I don't mind this. The one thing I really hate in Company of Heroes, the little bit of it I've played, is the massive defensive buff you get when you hit the retreat button. I think having a retreat is probably a good idea, although it could end quite badly. That's probably one of those ones that's there for lower level players, but if you're a higher level player, like, that seems like a good way of getting all my units killed. Having them retreat directly over the enemy army. And basically, I hope it doesn't give them any sort of defensive buffs. I hope that it just makes them run away in towards your base rather than a random direction. That is actually, now I think about it, quite relevant, because the number of times where you'll have a fight and your medevacs just hover over the enemy stalkers for like 5 minutes, if you're not paying attention, which clearly has never happened to me, of course, because I always am right on top of that. I'm definitely not returning back to my base to macro as all of my units died. Catch up all of the macro I missed during that fight. So, what additional sorts of things are you going to automate that haven't been done in StarCraft Warcraft? Whatever you learned not to force your players to have difficulty doing, and on the flip side, what are the more attention taxes that we are going to have? One of the just to give a bit more context on this, I think one of the big reasons why Brood War players enjoy Broodmore so much more than StarCraft 2. Some of its fundamental design and such like, but I think a huge part of it is the attention tax. In Brood War, when you say are doing, your what's it called, drop micro, Reaver, your Reaver drops, you can't macro back at home while you're doing that. Whereas if you look at, someone doing an Archon drop or a Storm drop or something, they're never missing any level of macro at all while they're doing it. So, right now, it's just automating control groups, which reduces the F2-ness of armies, which is good for new players, and the selecting a closer worker for the quick macro. And they aren't doing any more than that yet. And they're planning on the extra attention bandwidth mostly being spent on micro at the moment, because of its lower lethality than StarCraft 2. Have to see how this goes. And it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Monetizing structure, they are looking for publishers is kind of how I think is what that's saying. And what the rollout plan for the editor. They're just going with it will be rolled out is the plan for that. It's not going to be dumped all at one time. It's a question about what what they do is specifically UX designer, and how they got into the industry, like, basically. And he's saying that he builds the wireframes and documents them, I think, for the most part. And so I can't remember exactly what the UX design does. Is that the UI design? Or is that like the back end UI design? I can't remember exactly. I'm not sure. And are the skins models final? Because they looked polished. And I would agree with this. I'm not quite sure I agree about the readability. I thought it was fairly clear. There are probably tweaks they'll make. And they've... Yeah. So they're going to... the Lancers and Marines, I think they're working on trying to... That's going back into the pipeline to get altered a little bit. And yeah, I like it. It's a delicate balancing act between taking time for religions versus making forward progress. So sometimes an identified issue will take a bit of time before they circle back to get to it. And that, I think that's fair, because you can sort of go with, this solution will do for now. We need to get to new stuff. You can't go over old stuff forever. You need to get new stuff out as well. And then campaign will be solo, 2-player, or 3-player. And that's I think I like that idea. I don't think I will play campaign with friends, certainly not the first time. But it could be fun to see. And then, as we saw in the gameplay video, the forest, trees are going to be a much more interesting map element in many ways, and I would agree with this. And we're going to see different versions of this. So the forest tile set is just one of the environments, and there'll be terrain interactive elements in each of them, which will be interesting to see. I look forward to... I'm trying to think. So in an ice area, you could do... What's something that would be destructible? I guess like a glacier field or something, maybe? The Marines are able to pick their way through, but bigger units can't until it's destroyed. Random symmetrical map generation. They're not working on it, but I'm not sure I do want random map generation for ranked 1v1s. I like the planned out system, but I guess different. It works well in, say, Age of Empires, but I have to see how the game develops on that one, I think. Yes. What does each alpha represent, and what can we take away from this? And yeah, good question. I think this is basically a case of we're trying to develop in such a way that we can just take away and add rather than have to completely go from the ground up. But it's hard to say, and it's, you can't, and I do agree, you can't give a good answer to this. It's just a case of, well, guess we'll have to see how we go. We'll try to be as transparent as we can. Yes, I like this. Do you worry that each player having a scout unit makes it very hard for players to use any creative gameplays / rushes? He's asking if we could cheese. Wouldn't each player having a scout mean we're mostly going to see people start with the same standard build order until they can fight off the scout and hide the rest of their build? And it's like, that's a good question. There are certain places we want to iterate, and starting units is one area we're playing with. I'm not sure that Vanguard players starting with scout will dumb down the decision making the StarCraft placer, and it's likely to create more strategies while not forcing players into using economy as scouts, which is difficult for new players to understand. And this is one of those moments where I'm like, I get it, and I don't like it. I think it may be And I'm not saying that it's the wrong decision. I just really like the opportunity cost presented by, do I scout straight away? Do I not scout at all? Like, and I know it's not that much of your economy, but when, say, in the days when there was a 6-worker start, it was a big deal. Some people would, like, immediately scout, and that was a terrible idea, but people would do it. So, and then, yes, the reverse light forest. They're not looking at it currently, but who knows? And I like this. So he's asking, how often the games and tournaments happen against each other, and who's the current champion. Like, very often. Let's just say we have an employee Discord that we use that helps our team find people of their skill level to play against. It ranges from 0 to Monk, which is amusing. This is asking about how basically battle pass style things will work, and of course, no information. It's way too early for that stuff. And so, destroyed trees currently do not come back. Once it's like the rocks. Once it's down, it's down. Like this. This has led to some funny backdoor moments. Oh, I can imagine. And there is a difference spacing in the trees. Light forest is placed in such a way through tooling. So okay, right now. So I believe means that the heavy forests can also be destroyed. And it's purely just how they've placed the trees down, which is interesting. Yes, the voice lines. Yes, excellent. We are getting voice lines. I think we all knew that. I remember a while ago when we did not have those voice lines and how weird that felt when playing. I like that. These are people who understand RTS. Kind of knew that already, but it's nice when they say things like that. They're not currently any talking dogs, but since the scout is a robo dog, maybe he does need a voice box. Oh, you could have some such funny lines with that. Because, naturally, because they have voice lines, they're going to have the angry voice lines when you click on them 8,000 times. Now, does the dog just never get angry, or does it just start barking at you? I don't know. Either could be very funny. Randomly generation, they're not working on it. They have talked about it and may look into it in the future. Yep, that seems fair. And multiple biomes, yeah. But they want to have all of the same sort of destructible maps. So maybe it'll be a rock field on an ice map. It'll work. And so this is asking about, so in Age of Empires, you've got your different early game food generation wards. Say boar, for example, if you've ever played Age of Empires, gives a huge amount of food and you can gather it very quickly in the early game, but it can kill your workers if you're not careful. And also being in an exposed area of the map, so it's easy to raid. And they are working on it. They are working on it, and they have lots of iteration to do on it. And it is a little bit annoying in all these AMA type quest deals when they're like, we've thought about it and we're working on it. We've thought about it and we're working on it, but I do enjoy this, but yeah, we'll have to see. Looks like sharing more information on the Infernal later this year. So hopefully by Christmas we'll be able to see how the Infernal faction works a little bit. And that's all they can say. Don't have a date set for non-NDA testing, which is annoying because I want to watch people actually playing this game. So, yeah, oh well. And they're going to expand the testing pool and get early next year. So, in next year. So, I guess they're doing the July test, and what, they'll probably run for a month, maybe two. And they will get basically no information about that, which, yeah, happens. That's going to be a buggy mess. I can't wait until they can talk about how much of, like, I want to hear about weird bugs. And then, yeah, they'll get initial tests, understand how the servers work, which I think will be a major deal, is understanding how actually servers work in the real world. And get a little bit of basic feedback as to what they're going down the right track on and what they're going down the completely wrong track on. And then they'll have a better idea. Yep. So they don't have the extension mod system. So this is the system you can use to, make all the money, or make all the minerals rich minerals is one thing they do. I saw one recently where you can play on all of the old balance patches. And it's something they are working on. Oh, sorry, they don't have it yet. I'd be surprised if they don't. Yeah, it will be in the game, I imagine. And then I actually do like this. Where are we? We have some strong ideas as to what would make a great tutorial system for the editor. That is cool, because personally, my knowledge of editors is, oh god, triggers, run for it, run away. This is scary. And asking about reconnects as well, which is cool. Yeah, it's just this is asking how do they define the art style, which is a good question. They describe it as stylized realism, which maybe some art people can explain to me. Yeah, it's the art is not my area. But this is a really good, like, the question is framed really well. It's like the art style's not cartoony. Painterly also doesn't make sense. But it is distinctive, and I like it personally. 3D portraits are a maybe, only a maybe. And this is talking about how much work it is to do 3D animations. And so they're going to start out static and see where we go from there. I can understand that. So, and then yep, they use Blender for their 3D work for those art people who are curious. And they're looking into what it would do. Like, maybe they'll release assets, and I'm guessing that's so maybe they'll do it early or like in engine so that people can have a look at them and try and design some for when they're making their custom maps and such, so they can try and include their own similar assets in them that'll actually make sense. I don't want to know what video this links. What does this link to? Shoot, that didn't. Ah, yes. Excellent. This was the gag video. I don't know what the answer to this question. I think overall it'll be serious. It'll be more serious, but yeah, I do enjoy the and the goofiness appearing from time to time. I think that's necessary. You gotta have some character like that. And how will cosmetic... Okay, I'm not exactly sure what happened here. It broke a little bit. But considering the time, I think I'm going to have to close this one out here, folks. And I hope to see you all next time. I've got some cricket to watch. Because, boy, the English are, I apologize to all of my English viewers who feel differently. The spirit of cricket does not cover being an idiot. Anyway, leaving off of that, if you've managed to make it this far and not been instantly turned off and offended by this joke, please like and subscribe. Comment down below. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me how much a waste of time this is. I don't care. I've enjoyed it. I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you next time on the next episode of the StormWatch.